Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Torcom Talk. We're super excited to have these two guests on today, Adam McAboy and Mark Henderson. Adam ran track at UC Berkeley and Mark swam for UC Berkeley. Mark even went on to win gold for the Atlantic Games in '96. The two of them went on to form the Athletes Village, which is a new company that is basically the Quora for athletes. It's an amazing resource where athletes of any age and or their parents can go in and ask things like, what should I be eating? What should I be training with? How do I deal with game day stress? All this stuff, this resources that I wish I had when I was an athlete but didn't exist, is now available. And so we get into details on how this works and how many people they've helped and all the great stuff that it's been doing. So if you are an athlete, definitely stay tuned for this. Or if you're a parent of an athlete, this is a podcast for you. So please enjoy the conversation between me, Adam, and Mark. So Mark and Adam, tell us a bit about the Athletes Village.
Very simply, it is a must for any athlete, coach, parent to go to find the best answers for their personal questions in sports.
Okay. And what's it? Is it online? Is it an app, or how do people find it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a web application right now.
Okay.
Soon it'll be a mobile application as well, but yeah, it's a place you can post questions, get answers that are relevant, trusted from, reliable sources like pro athletes, Olympians.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's actually surprises to the upside. It's an interactive site, like he said, where you can go on and ask questions, and we have people on there all the way from Olympic gold medalists to pro athletes, all the way down to, kids competing at the youth level, sharing their experiences. So it's been kind of shocking to us how quickly this thing has grown.
What are some of the best examples you guys have been seeing that has been helping kids out or parents with going on it's like a Quora kind of for sports, right?
Yeah, but I think when you look at all the negative things that are happening in youth sports or in sports in general in this day and age, it's...
What do you mean by negative?
So you're looking at increasing injury rates. Every 25 seconds, every 25 seconds in the U.S., a child under the age of 18 is brought to the ER with a youth sports-related injury every 25 seconds. So, and on top of that, we have increasing dropout rates. So with those two things out there, a lot of the reasons that these things are happening is misinformation. So you have kids that are being forced into specifying in one sport at a very young age, which is causing a lot of overtraining injuries, which is one of the main reasons, 50% of the reasons that you're seeing kids going to the ER with injuries, right? And so if we can get out there and we can get some of the people that parents look up to and young athletes look up to say, hey, here's what I did. Here's what I tried to avoid. And a lot of that is, if you look at all of the statistics that revolve around the Olympics, say 2010, they did a poll of athletes. 82% of the athletes played multiple sports all the way up until high school. If you were to go and ask any parent, I think, out there, just a normal parent, and their kids are playing sports, hey, do you think your kid needs to specialize young to compete, at a high level?
Right.
I would say 99% of them are going to say yes.
It's kind of like the Tiger Woods syndrome, I would call it. You see an example of somebody who was forced into early specialization and then achieved, superstar status at the top of the sport, but that doesn't mean it's right for everybody.
Right.
And going back to the injuries that you were talking about, one of the most important things to preventing injuries in young athletes is a complete development of all the muscle groups, not just specific muscle groups. Especially with sports like baseball or golf or even tennis, where it's so one-sided, you're not developing the rest.
Do you see some questions that you're just right away oh wow, I'm for you guys, it's just common sense. I mean, growing up both playing sports, but you keep on seeing it asked over and over again?
There's some questions that have come on there that have been really kind of almost scary. We've had to really rush out and try to find experts in those fields. We've gotten a lot of eating disorder questions, and some of the things we're learning as we go, but some of the things that we've learned in that specific field is that, those type, that can spread on a team. Say one of the best girls on the team or one of the best boys on the team has some type of eating disorder, and the other teammates see them getting lighter, and they start questioning, oh, you're going to eat that, while they're out together, then it starts to spread. And it's something we didn't know about. But, we've seen thousands of views, come from around the world of, questions that pertain to certain things like that.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, to talk about the awesome elephant rule, this is the first time I've ever held an Olympic gold medal. It's awesome. I feel like I can knock somebody out with this thing. It's pretty great. So, Mark, you won this back in 1996, right?
Yep.
And that was the what event?
It was the 400 medley relay in Atlanta, Georgia.
Can you describe that experience?
It was unbelievable. I mean, it's I think athletes tend to tell you there's so many backstories going on that it's hard to really get across to people what was going through my mind at the time. But picture 20 years of training going into one event, one particular piece of time. Another side to it was that it was the first time in the history of swimming that we were not favored to win that event. We had never lost that event in international competition, and we were actually favored to lose by a length and a half.
Wow.
And so
did
to
that
the Russian
fire you?
team, oh, it just got us, we live for that.
Yeah.
It was another reason to fire us up. But also all of us had been bred through NC2As where relays are such a big part of the point scoring, how to have amazing relay starts and just get fired up, and be ready for it. So, it was last event of swimming for the Olympics, and so the crowd was pretty riled up. So it was a pretty amazing experience.
What was the biggest takeaway from that experience looking back?
Sounds pretty cliche, and it really fits into what we're doing, but it takes a village. There's no way that I would have done that or competed at that level if it wasn't for my parents giving up so much time and energy, to bring me to practice at 4:00 in the morning, or, giving up their weekends, or my coaches that I had, my friends that were supportive even when I was in high school, my teammates, my physical therapists, my nutritionists, my, you name it, my weight coaches. So it was a combined effort, definitely.
What do you think would have happened if the Athletes Village existed before your Olympian status and while you were in high school or middle school and you're able to use that? What are some of the things that you would have learned faster, do you think?
I would have been so much better. I honestly would have been so much better. Because the number one question you get as an Olympian, when you go talk to kids is, what would you have done differently? And what I find on our site is tons of things I would have done differently. And, when we do interviews, like Adam's shaking his head, because we talk about this all the time, when we do interviews, I get so fired up. I get off the interview and I'm like, oh, if I had known that when I was competing, and so, I would have meditated. I would have done yoga.
Do you meditate today?
I'm starting to.
Good.
Yeah. And I've actually noticed a difference. I've only done it a couple of weeks, but it's kind of like my New Year's resolution.
Good for you. Yeah, it's awesome. So you would have meditated, you would have done yoga or some other things?
I would have trained specific to my event, which a lot of kids are doing these days.
Okay.
I would have trained weights specific to my event. So a lot of the movements that you're doing, I was in there lifting with the football players,
Oh, whoa.
So
that's not supposed to happen.
It doesn't
I don't know
happen
much about
these
swimming,
days.
but
It doesn't happen these days, but it's the same coach, right?
Okay.
So when I was at Cal, the same guy that was coach, that was doing weights for the football players and the baseball players, he's doing something for the swimmers. We're obviously doing a little bit different than them, but a lot of the same.
How was the diet back then? Do you look at it like that was crazy, or was it okay?
I had a nutritionist the last year that I competed. Other than that, we had no idea at that time.
So you're just eating Big Macs and whatever, because you're exercising
calories.
6 hours a day.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And you think about we were eating right before we went to bed. All these kind of crazy things, and we just thought hey, eat pasta the night before and you'll be fine.
I think there's a mindset also of the athlete today, at least something that I've learned from doing interviews and being, building the Athletes Village. When I was competing in track and field, I was an athlete when I was at the track and, warming up before, and I knew that I was there to compete, but there's a mindset now that I think that I would have had today, learning from the Athletes Village, that you're an athlete all the time. It's what you eat, how you sleep, how you recover, how you try to be consistent with going to bed and waking up and just the whole day you're an athlete, not just when you're leading up to practice and coming home from practice and all of that. It's just...
Well, this is a good question to some athletes. Is one thing that you guys have dealt with is the nerve, right? The nerves starting to go, like you're about to start in track, you're about to start in swimming, and those do build up. I don't care how many times you've done it, the butterflies get going. But when it's time to go, and this could transcend just kids that might be listening to this and parents and giving tips on that, but also entrepreneurs that need to go give a public speaking talk and get those nerves. So how do you hone that in and be like, yeah, I know you're there, but it's time to perform?
Yeah, I think it's training your brain, to perform at a specific time. So for me, it's all about the routine beforehand, and nerves are great. Like nerves are energy. Like I love, getting that. That's what I miss. One of the biggest things I miss.
That kind of high.
Yeah,
I feel that too.
High.
That's why I do a little bit of crazy shit. But
yeah, right. And it's like, it's why people jump out of planes. It's why you get addicted to certain things, going fast skiing or whatever. So for me, it was the routine though. It wasn't, if I'm doing the exact same thing leading up to walking up on the blocks, my brain knows like, boom, all right, we're ready to go. Like it's time to go. Like, and so I think where people, get nervous and it becomes negative is they're doing something different every time. Everything looks, oh my God, what if my goggles fall off? Or, oh my God, what if this happens? So honestly, it's what I tell kids is any sport you do, if you can get into a good routine before you get out there and actually compete, and get into a good routine also of resetting yourself. So like quarterbacks, you throw an interception, they go back to the sidelines. You see a lot of these guys, every time you see Brady, Tom Brady, he's like, got an iPad and he's like, it doesn't matter if he threw a touchdown or if he threw an interception. He's right back into that routine of like looking how the defense set up, how they react, blah, blah, blah.
Interesting.
So I think, you notice, successful athletes, we're studying them, right? And so, it's fun to watch and see like where the consistencies are.
I think looking back on nerves also, that nerves are something that I think can be embraced.
Yeah.
You spend a ton of energy getting ready for something. That in itself is unique. We go through a daily routine. It's just kind of this, but if you're really focused on something, then yeah, you're going to have nerves because you're going to test what you're trying to achieve, whatever it is. It can be a public speech. It can be, an athletic event. It can be a number of things. Asking a girl out, even, right?
Sure.
So it's something that you put a ton of energy into. You should be a little bit nervous, but that's cool. And look at that as a unique life experience.
You could also be using that as like training as a young athlete towards like, if you don't end up becoming a professional athlete, if you know how to deal with nerves, then you're going to be able to go into job interviews more comfortably. You're going to be able to deal, like you said, with girls more comfortably. You're going to be able to ask for raises more comfortably, promotions, start a business if you want to do that more comfortably because you were used to doing that. But like resetting the nerves and going through and getting that kind of advice when there is a lot of people out there that just kind of freak out at the whole thing, and so they kind of collapses from that playing field, which is too bad.
And it's too bad also because I think a lot of people feel this fear of failure, a judgment of not winning or not getting that yes or not having a successful speech or whatever it is. But that's just part of life, and you learn from these things and you do better next time, hopefully. And again, looking back on things, there's no failure. It's all success. You may not have achieved your goal, but that's so great that you tried.
And the important thing is that like right now there is a resource for athletes to go to that are new to this whole thing and are trying to figure stuff out. And if they're having a problem with nerves, because I know a lot of people that I'm doing, there actually is a place to go where you can ask how to deal with that, and you have Olympians answering these questions for you. Like, holy shit, that's some valuable information. That's
crazy.
Free.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That you guys built, which I love so much. So that's there, and that's been like just sitting void for ever since humans existed. And now you guys have actually put it together, and I freaking love it, and it's starting to blow up, and it's freaking exciting. And the amount of people you've been helping is just like, it warms my heart. But Adam, so you've been an entrepreneur, so when it came for a large portion of your life, how did you end up finding Mark, and how did you guys decide to start the Athletes Village?
Well, I mean, we met in college. He was going to the pool, I was going to the track. Our paths crossed a lot.
What college did you guys go to?
UC Berkeley.
That's
The
right.
Bears. We One thing for me, and this is another thing that I've learned a lot about how I would have handled this differently just through what we're building here. I didn't really like hanging out with the people I was competing against on my track team. I didn't mind hanging out with the sprinters and the jumpers, but I was a distance runner, and everybody on my team was all, competing, and we're all pretty close to as good as each other. So there was this tension that I wanted to step away from. So I ended up hanging out with a lot of swimmers and water polo players, and that's kind of how Mark and I met, and we just stayed close for years and years and started talking about. Mark brought up.
When was the first time? Yeah, when was the first time the idea sprung up?
Probably. It's been something in the back of my head for a really long time. When
Were
I
you
got
thinking
done,
about that in the Olympics? What you're
Well,
saying on
after
the
the
gold
Olympics,
medal?
yeah,
And you're
yeah.
like, man, I wish there was a resource.
I could have gone so much faster.
The first baby
Always
steps,
think of that.
though, stem
Yeah.
from that a little bit.
No, I think it was like
Athletics.
right after that. Like I grew up in an area where, right outside of DC, and it wasn't like high end, like very rich area or anything to that effect. Very middle class, and I just honestly believe like we didn't receive the same resources that a lot of other kids did. I didn't have a personal coach or a speed coach.
That's
or
still
any
the
of that
same
stuff.
case today.
Yeah,
is what
yeah.
I'm hearing. Like my nephew, he swims for Penn State, and
Yeah.
he's like, the football team gets this royalty treatment, and we're like, they
Yeah.
don't even get all the scholarships they need.
Yeah. And I think this is a way like you can level the playing field, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was super frustrated after the Olympics. Like, there wasn't really anything set up for us by the USOC to give back. And I could give a clinic in front of like 100, 200 kids, but how many of them are actually listening? And it's kind of worried that I'm turning some of the parents psycho, like they listen to what I'm saying. They're going home and they're like, we're going to do this, this. Right? And so I'm like, trying to be very careful what I talk about. But for me, I wanted to touch as many people, and kind of like you said, like it's human nature to pass on what you've learned to the next generation.
Yeah, people love to teach.
Done it since the beginning of man.
If you don't like to teach, you're not a human.
Especially about something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like your love for books. Like I've seen you on LinkedIn and a few other spots where you're, hey, you guys should check this out.
Yeah.
And that's something you're passionate about. Like I'm passionate about swimming. I'm passionate about just my experience. Right?
Have you ever given advice, either one of you guys, to a rival while you were competing against them because they just came up and asked you? I know you were hanging out with Mark and the swimmers, so maybe.
Well, I mean,
you should see me.
maybe
ride.
on a very light way, but
It's an odd
probably
thing
not
to
a
do.
direct rival. I mean, there were.
It's not
when I
necessarily a
was-
smart thing to do. I'm just curious.
When I was competing, there would be people who weren't as fast as I was who would come up and ask me questions, and I would be happy to chat with them. But they were not. I wouldn't consider them a rival. They were
Okay.
a threat as more like someone I would want to help. Even
Okay.
every once in a while, I'd let
Yeah.
someone beat me
Yeah.
just because I knew it made them feel really good, and it didn't matter.
That's cool.
In that particular race, but
Right.
I wouldn't say nothing comes to mind exactly.
Yeah.
You.
I would say like one of the coolest things in my life that happened was at Olympic trials, only 2 guys go. And I was on a team that was training at the training center in Colorado Springs.
So only 2 guys go, sorry, really quick, out of like each.
For each event.
Each event, okay.
Except for the 100 freestyles because of relays and stuff like that. But 2 guys go. Doesn't matter if you're the world record holder. It doesn't matter if you're first in the world. It doesn't matter if you're injured or sick or whatever that day. 2 guys go. Whoever touches, the first 2 people touch the wall first. And I trained with a guy, Byron Davis, who could have been the first African American at the time to make an Olympic swim team for the U.S. And he came in and probably ranked like, I don't know, probably like 20th in the world when he came to train with us in Colorado Springs. And we shared a lot of info. Like we trained together for 2 years, and he was seated first going into finals. So in trials, he put out the fastest time. And in finals, he was seated first, and I was seated 6th. And I ended up touching him out to make the team. And first thing he did was get out of the water, walk right over to me, and gave me this huge hug and lifted me off the ground. And so when I talk to kids and they ask me, like, what's my favorite experience or what's my best memory, they all expect me to be like, breaking the world record and touching the wall, blah, 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 and being on the war stand. My favorite of all time is what he did. And it kind of opened my eyes to, the importance of, like, he's going to be my friend forever. Like, he's family. And he stood behind me at probably one of his weakest moments, right?
That's a cool story.
Yeah, that's a really cool story. So that basically goes to show like your gratitude towards his modesty, his humbleness. I mean,
his
like
maturity too.
yeah. Where a lot of guys would have just walked away, or some guys would have just exploded and threw their goggles down, but a big giant hug.
Yeah.
But to think of that, to hear that story and then be like, okay, that left the biggest effect on Mark, who won Olympic gold, not standing on a podium or anything like that. So perhaps you should treat other people that way as well. When you get beat at things, stuff like that, go up, shake their hand, show good sportsmanship. Don't be a jerk, because look how far it ends up going. Look at the net positive that you had on somebody's life from doing a positive thing instead of letting out your anger demons or whatever is within you.
Dude, I can't tell you how important that is. I mean, if I could say one thing to young athletes and parents and coaches, the most important thing that you can do in sports is what you said, is lean over the lane line and shake the person's hand over the finish line after a game, shaking their hand, because when all is said and done, I'm not going to the club with my medal.
No.
I'm not, going to a barbecue with my medal and hanging out. I'm going with the friends I made. And now, because I was fortunate enough to travel the world and compete, I have friends in all different types of countries that I can lean on or, go visit or any of that type of stuff. It really hit home with me. I had a close friend on the national team die suddenly in a car accident about 5 years ago. And every single guy on the national team showed up, dropped everything, and showed up for the funeral and made sure that his wife was taken care of and still check in on her. So to me, like, kind of gives me that comfort if anything were to happen, It's a family, right?
Did you ever want to give up being in swimming?
Oh, dude. Yeah.
I asked because I gave up. Freshman year, I did one. My dad was a swimmer and stuff, and my grandfather, and I was big into football and lacrosse. I did those for years, but I was like, okay, I'll do swimming. And the 2-a-days, the pool at 6 a.m., I didn't last.
Well, that part was fun. Like, that part was
fun.
That was the fun. Like, to me, that was the routine. Like, around my boys. Yeah. Like, seeing that lane line. No, I would say after the 92 Olympic trials, it was kind of that scenario I said earlier. Like, I was ranked second in the world. I was ranked first in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
I backed off in the morning in prelims and just missed the world record. Like, I was that guy that touched the wall and the crowd was like, oh! And I was like, what? What the heck? And then at night, I was in between my two idols, Pablo Morales and Matt Biondi, who were the current world record holder and like legend of all time. He was Michael Phelps before Michael Phelps was popular.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew how they swam it, and I completely changed my race strategy and ended up, I was winning by like a length and a half with like 10 meters to go, and I completely died. Like, my body just wasn't ready to swim like that type of race. I usually come from behind and run everybody down. And so I got done, didn't make the team. Again, I was ranked second in the world. Like, magazines had me like winning medals at the Olympics, and he's probably going to be the favorite for the gold or silver.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a moment of reflection. It was a moment of pity, feeling sorry for myself, and but with all that being said, like, everything happens for a reason, I believe.
Yep.
And I can give a super strong talk, or I can be on the site and helping kids and saying, like, look, I've lost at the highest. You can learn my mistake at a very young level. Like, don't worry about who's next to you. Same with track and field, right? Like, you're not going to change your race because of who's next to you, which is what I did hopefully not, right? And so, that's the type of stuff, like, we just get super excited about on the site, is like so many people kind of open up and share these things that we're supposed to protect. As an athlete, you're not supposed to share any weakness. You're not supposed to show any weakness.
Yeah.
Right? Which works against you actually improving.
Yeah, no, if you end up talking about your vulnerabilities, and other people can come in and help. And then also, I realize I like to talk about my vulnerabilities a lot. Heck, I even post about it socially. And when I do, I realize, like, what I learned from that, because I typically, when I say, like, errors and ways I've fallen, I'm talking about that out loud, and then I start realizing, hey, you actually came out of that pretty good, and everything's okay, and the world didn't burn, and you learned a lot from that. And as I'm telling that to whoever the person is at the time, it's just going through my head, and I'm kind of reteaching myself that everything was okay, and look at how much you're learning, and you're actually helping other people too. I fully believe that like the most we learn is through failure. That's why I love to fail.
Yeah.
Like honestly, like I'm like, sweet, I now learned another way not to do something, because that teaches me way faster than a book does. Yeah, the book was kind of talking about don't do this in business stuff, but then I did it myself and screwed up, and now I know.
Yeah.
Now I know for sure that's how you want to do it.
It's funny because you can say that to people and you can't teach it to them. You have to almost have that experience to really learn to embrace that experience.
Yeah, like I had to learn the hard way not to wear cotton while being in the Cascades, climbing mountains.
Yeah.
I almost died. Like, I was covered in sweat and jeans and everything, climbing the South Sister like 15 years ago, not knowing what I was doing. Almost died with my best friend. He was wearing all cotton too. Oh, it was ridiculous. That
Cotton
story could take a
kills,
whole
man.
podcast. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now when I'm out like climbing mountains, you don't see any cotton on me except for the bandana, because it soaks up the sweat and keeps it out of my eyes.
Yeah.
But I was thinking to myself, I was like, well, you're talking about like these failures and stuff. I'm like, man, if there was like the Athletes Village when I was going in when I was in high school, like almost, God, I'm getting old, 15 years ago.
You're a young pup. Yeah.
It would have been something for me to go and be like, hey, I'm thinking about quitting.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe it is the right choice. Maybe it's not. I mean, I turned out to be okay, but it would have been good to be like, yeah, no, I've been down that road. That's okay. Why? Like, talk it out.
Or take a break.
Yeah.
Reset your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of, that's another thing that's great that you'll learn getting on the site, is that there are more than one way to be successful. There are lots of ways you can do it.
Yeah.
You don't have to specialize early. You can specialize early. What's right for you?
Yeah.
Maybe you play, you know, there are a couple of Olympian track athletes who didn't even stop playing other sports until they were in college. Which to me, again, that's something I could have benefited, you know, that information when I was in high school. But yeah, there are a lot of different ways to do things that work.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have it as a resource, just to be like, hey, I'm thinking about quitting. And then even if after I pulled the trigger and dealing with my dad's disappointment, and my mom was my dad definitely was, and like to know that there was somebody there to listen, that people that may have been through that, and like, hey, this is how, you know, we've dealt with that. Because, you know, if you're an athlete going, like if you have an Olympian that's like, let's say you have an Olympian in soccer that's on the site, which I know you guys do, and he was, up until deciding to just go like full-time soccer, was also playing baseball and football and basketball. They may have been doing year-round sports, most likely. And then started realizing, no, soccer is the way. And so they decided to like really hone in on soccer. Well, that means that those other sports need to be quit. And that means there's going to be some disappointment from certain friends and family members when those decisions pop up.
Oh, totally.
So like for them to be able to say, hey, I know what you're feeling like. This is how I dealt with that issue with my parents. Because that's a big thing that hangs over all youth athletes' heads, is disappointing their parents. These people that raised you, and they enrolled you into the program, and now you're going to pick another one over that one, but that was dad's favorite, that was mom's favorite. God, I wish I had that, because I went to a dark place back then, man. That was a bummer. There wasn't an athlete's village to help me out.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that put things in perspective for me as a parent was being a coach, being a youth volunteer coach, you know, and looking down the sidelines and seeing the reactions of the parents to how their kids are playing, and then to see the reaction of kids. So it doesn't even matter what age you are. I even did this at the Olympics. When I hit the wall, one of the first things I did was look up and find my parents in the audience, right? And you see that for kids of any age, whether they trip over the ball, score a goal, miss a wide open shot, whatever. One of the first things they do is look at their parents' reaction. And if you're one of these parents that has like the overreaction of like, oh my God, or, you know, like, you're the best, you know, like all of that stuff, just staying mellow. Like, you see it with the most successful coaches, right? You look at Coach K. They could be down 12 or down 18. He's kind of like, you know, you can't really tell. Belichick, you can't really tell what's going on, you know, as far as where they are in the game. They're keeping this kind of steady pace. And as a parent, what I've seen is like that for me, the higher percentage kids who are doing really well in sports, like when I interview them about their parents, are like, dude, my parents were super mellow. Like they just told me they love me, and they love to watch me play, and it's kind of the same. You start seeing the cool thing about this site when you go on there is you start seeing repetition. And you start seeing from a parent perspective, like, wow, like Mia Hamm's dad did this, or whatever it is, like whoever the athlete is on there. We don't have Mia Hamm's dad on there, but I'm just saying, like, whatever the athlete's parent, perspective is, typically what we're seeing is there's this consistency among most of them that has bred success.
So what's the why then? The why of the Athletes Village?
The goal is to, among the goals is to really just help people get the most out of the sports experience, to stay active. One of the things we were talking about earlier is, for me, I judged my success based on winning and losing when I was competing, and at some point the pressure got to be a lot, and the fun left for me from track and field. And then eventually,
when did that happen?
It was in college. I started getting more and more injuries, and then I would get on these kicks where I would start training really, really hard, and of course get myself hurt more. Again, all information I could have learned by what we're doing now. But there's a huge benefit to sports beyond just winning and losing. It's staying active, staying healthy, being fit, having a healthy lifestyle, being able to play sports with your friends and your kids and your parents as you age and go through life. And it's not about winning and losing. So, one of the early whys was to help kids and help parents help kids make good decisions and get the most out of the sporting experience. That staying active for life. You see kids for reasons that we've probably talked about. I don't remember if we already talked about it here, but pressure, early specialization, injuries. Just stop having fun. Stop playing sports. Something like 70% of kids stop playing organized sports in the United States by the time they're 13.
Really?
Yeah.
70%.
Yeah. And then you see obesity rates. Bodies are changing and
how
things
weird
are happening, but like, what's happening here?
What a correlation.
So if we could just make a positive impact on that percentage and take it down from 70 a little bit, that would benefit the whole society in a lot of ways.
I like that wise to keep people active.
Yeah.
Really.
So
just have more fun with it.
Yeah.
Like I get so sick and tired of hearing stories, because we hear it more often than not, of like what you said, like it almost created tension between you and your parents. Like I don't want to disappoint them, and they were so into it, and they've spent so much money, and all these, we've done this, we've done that, but it's more like, this is your thing. Like this, have fun. Like you should be out there. Like
I actually lied about it. I quit, and like I was like staying after at school because I didn't want to face my dad's wrath.
What a great experience!
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
freshman in high school. Yeah, freshman in high school. Just like, oh god.
And you somehow turned out all right.
Yeah,
jury might still get it.
Yeah. I'm only 31, I guess. You guys said I was still young, so I'll say it that way.
No, it's.
So, what have been some of your guys' favorite moments? Sitting back, being the admins of the Athletes Village, and a question comes in and some answers come in, and you're like, that was fucking awesome. Or that was awesome, if we want to edit that out later.
No, that's
what you said right there is, for me, the biggest thing. We've gone out to, test groups and talked to people about what they would want to ask, and when we were building the product and doing some interviews with those questions. But when I see a question come in, and then I see an Olympic athlete come answer it, and then I see a psychologist answer it. That's not Mark. And I see a parent of an Olympic athlete come answer it, and just a great parent who has some smart things to say. And now this person reaches out to our community looking for some help, looking for an answer, and you start to have a body of work of answers from different awesome sources. And there's the whole experience for me. I mean, that just makes me feel as happy as can be. Someone looking for help, using our platform and getting help.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like a question coming in and it just going massively viral. Like, I just think one example would be a question came in like, how did you guys deal, like it was addressed to like the female athletes on the site, period. And it said like, how do you guys deal with like your naturally changing body, as you're going through sports? Because girls obviously change, their bodies change as they're going through. And man, talk about hitting a passionate point.
Mm-hmm.
We had pro athletes coming from every direction, every sport that we represented on the site, answering this question with passionate answers, and
supportive.
Yeah, and this thing, I forgot the numbers on it, but it was like this thing hit like 32 countries or 26 countries. I want to be right, yeah, like 26 countries in 24 hours, a couple thousand views.
Right.
So it was insane how someone just had this simple question, and it was like this youth athlete or whatever that came on there and asked it, right? And all of a sudden they're probably like, whoa, they're going to probably get notifications like this person hit it, so that's got to be cool for them to kind of get that type of feedback.
And on questions like that, another thing is that you can ask it anonymously. So if you're worried about being judged, or if you're a parent and you don't want to be calling out your kid, but your kid's showing signs of using PEDs or having some issues with depression or anxiety or eating disorders or whatever it is, you can ask anonymously, and the community is there supporting. So
have you guys been seeing any like trends going on the site as far as like things that people are really into as like a society lately when it comes to, I don't know, like diet questions or or like workout questions that like that's not the way I was trained, but I guess that's what's going on now.
Yeah. I mean, nutrition is a huge part of the site, and there is a ton of amazing information. But one of the questions somebody posted was, it's a track and field one, and it's something to the effect of, what are the biggest mistakes runners make in their first big race? Which I can relate to because as a former runner, like you competing in all these little league meets or whatever, at some point you're going to make it to a sectional championship or maybe a state championship or who knows. And at one of these times you're going to be a sophomore or a junior in high school, and now you're at this competing against all these different schools and all these different colors and all these people here, crowds, parents, coaches, college recruiters. It's a really, really different environment. That question got so many views.
It's crazy.
It's kind of astounding to me when I look at it and I see the view count on it. It's pretty.
Trending wise, I think like we've seen a ton of like plant-based questions.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that.
Sport-specific training. So like, swimmers have been talking about a lot of this new stuff that's going on where you're doing a lot of sprint training your body to be at a certain speed versus distance. Like trying to create a base. We're getting a lot of these questions related to, just different techniques you can use for recovery.
There's also a little bit of a trend of transition to career.
Yeah.
So that's been something that's been hitting lately, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're not
it's tied into depression too.
Competing athlete forever. So.
Yeah. No. And so what would be like advice to athletes that are really getting into their prime and they're pros now, not depending on the sport, and they might be short-sighted? I see it a lot when it comes to NFL players that go bankrupt that are 80% of the time, or just how they're treating their bodies, and it's not going to last like that forever as far as rebound effect. They could go into drugs, which I'm sure you guys know a little bit of that dark side of the world. But what do you think would be some advice to people that are looking short-sighted to their bodies in the long haul? Like, you're not going to be in your upper 20s, early 30s forever.
I would say find someone who's navigated what you're doing successfully and kind of reach out to them. It's kind of what we're doing, but
that is what you guys are doing. So mentorship.
Yeah, like it's sort of a mentorship, like when I was coming up through the ranks, I saw that Pablo Morales had, and he was the world record holder at the time in my event, he had done a deal with the Boys and Girls Club. And he had, he'd taken on, being a mentor to a young kid in East Palo Alto. And I was like, that is cool. And he, I heard him talk about it. And so, I read about it, and I went and did the same thing. and it was actually one of the coolest things. I mean, he met Ovid, and had this kid who had 5 brothers and sisters, was in the hard part of Oakland, and he became like a mainstay in our house at the water polo player swimmer house.
That's pretty cool.
But just distracts you from all of the stuff that you start thinking about in college, right? As far as like having to perform at a certain level, both academically and
there's a real world outside of your athletic world.
Yeah.
Kind of grounds you down a little bit.
I think a little bit just to what you were talking about there. For athletes who are short-sighted, I think it's important if they have the ability to see enough into the future that they could look to somebody who they idolize a little bit, like Pablo with you, and maybe look to them for mentorship. But unfortunately, there's something with being young that you feel like you're never going to die, and like I'm different or whatever. So it's hard to teach that and to pass that on to those people. But again, an athlete who's looking to improve on one element of what they're doing in their own sport on the Athletes Village can find information about that there, and hopefully
not too late,
get something from it before it's too late.
Who do you think the Athletes Village helps more, the parents of athletes or the athletes themselves?
I think it's a great question. I think it's who uses it more.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, one of the complexities of creating this platform is that we're bringing 3 distinct different groups together. Obviously, there's a relationship between them, but it's really, if you focus on one of them, you can really direct all your energy into that group. But we're trying to bring these groups together so that the information can be shared. So that's been one of the complexities. But I think to answer the question, if you use the site a lot, you're going to benefit a lot from it. If you use it a little, you're going to benefit a little bit from it. So yeah, you can go on and read and read and read and
what are some ways that like parents have benefited from it? Athletes, parents of athletes.
I would say that there's such a pressure out there for parents nowadays to have your kids specialize early and to get on travel team early, or you get left behind. And it's hard as a parent because these kids that do specialize early and start training all these extra days when they're young, I know they're going to burn out and they're going to get injured. There's a way higher chance of them getting a major injury at a young age.
I didn't know that.
Way higher chance. And so
why do you think that is?
It's repetitive.
Just some muscles just getting torn.
All the muscles.
99% of the time.
Some of them.
Interesting.
Yeah, 99%.
Is that why Tiger Woods fell apart?
Yeah. I mean, look at him now, right? Like,
yeah.
He's lasted longer than others, and he was fortunate enough when he got to a certain level that he had all of these amazing people helping him, right? But, I'm not saying not to specialize. There are certain kids that have that mindset where they're like, oh my God, the only thing I love is baseball. I don't want to play any other sports. Don't force me to play other sports.
If you swing a bat so many times, it's gonna.
Yeah, but if you do that, then what's your injury prevention routine? You should be doing bands. You should be doing all this injury prevention stuff from a very young age. Like, I was super fortunate to have a coach who was really into that, and so I never had a major injury, when I was competing, which was shocking because I was a butterfly, right? And so, like I said,
making you do all sorts of crazy shit with your muscles.
Right?
Like,
yeah,
that's
right.
It's a big movement.
Yeah, I don't know why I chose that event,
but
but
hey, you won.
Not the smartest one, but but that's it. Like, that's the cool thing that you'll see on the site is like everybody's got their own way of getting to this point. But if you're going to go this route, then we've got people who have done that.
Yeah.
Right. So parents, like, they could find perhaps lessons into why, hey, this trend right now is going towards specialized, but here's some reasons why you shouldn't. Come to Athletes Village and ask. Like, could help if they're also doing soccer. Or for, like, Bend specifically, for people watching us in Bend, like, there's a big craze on, like, making your kid awesome at skiing or snowboarding, and, like, that's it. Like, well, should you get them in soccer or baseball, or wherever the case may be? I haven't heard that argument before. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah, all the stats show us that, if you specialize young means under the age of 11, then your chance of injuries go way up, your chance of quitting by the age of 13 go way up, your chance of having nagging injuries for the rest of your life go up. So, if you're going to do it, just make sure you're doing the injury prevention stuff, especially if you're a girl. Like, Women have, I think it was a 6-time or 8-time higher chance of getting an ACL tear than men, just because of the way their body is set up.
Wider, so the angle of the leg is a little bit different.
Interesting.
So it's more
So, people like Boss Training here in town are doing an amazing job helping young athletes.
So how do women, what would be a takeaway for women that are watching or listening to this podcast on how they should prevent an ACL from blowing up?
Go online. You can go on our site. You can go on YouTube. You can find ACL prevention injury exercises.
So that's on the Athletes Village as well. People helping with. Okay, awesome.
Yeah, there's a whole separate section on that. And like I said, there's organizations that are out there that are specifically training kids to avoid injuries.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of. I'm just remembering this conversation from some of the pro and U.S. level lacrosse women. So many of them did another sport like cross country. I mean, it's still running, but it's not the side to side, start, stop, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's still an endurance sport. You're still getting fit. You're staying active and athletic, but you're doing this instead of this, and it develops the muscles around the knee, around the leg. Not obviously a ton of stuff around the leg, but it develops everything so that it holds it together better. So that's part of injury prevention as far as it relates to not specializing. Another thing I want to say about specializing early is, let's just say you choose a sport, swimming, and you're specializing. You're in the pool way more, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, whatever it is. Well, yeah, you're probably going to be better than if you're 9 than the other 9-year-olds. So you're going to have this expectation on yourself moving forward when you're 10 and 11, 12, 13, and now everybody's going 5 days a week, 6, 7 days a week, whatever. And all of a sudden, you're not way up here, and everyone's kind of catching up to you. And what does that do up here? I've always been better, and now I'm going into high school expecting to be the best swimmer, and I'm maybe the second best on my team. Now maybe I'm third best. Maybe I'm barely the best.
How much of the game do you think is mental compared to physical?
I think that could screw you up.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So,
but a lot of people are all like, oh, I got to make sure that I'm doing the right training regimen and all this stuff. Like, what about working on your mind? To be prepared for that.
It's huge.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's
why you said meditation. Maybe that's one of the reasons that you were thinking. I was like working on the mind, have control of like pushing out that noise.
Yeah, to visualize. I think the more you visualize your event, and it helped me if I had swum in a certain pool, so I could visualize it even better. The more I visualize, the less nervous I got.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're just kind of doing what you've already run through your head 1,000 times.
Right.
So yeah, I think it makes a huge difference. I think, you're seeing like the mental side of it, especially, the way kids are training these days, football, baseball, basketball, you name it, any sport that's on our site, they're all talking about being in game type situation, always being put in game type situation. You hear it with Steve Kerr talking about the Warriors, or Belichick talking about the Patriots.
Yeah.
It's all about being put in that situation. So when you're actually in that situation, you're competing without even thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
right.
The best races I've had as an athlete, I'm the worst interview, because they're like, hey, what'd you think of this? You made a move here. And I'm like, dude, I don't even remember. That's that's where I plan to make a move, but I didn't see that.
Mm-hmm.
The best races I had, I don't really even remember it that clearly. It was more of just like, in motion, and your body's just doing it because it's been trained.
I think another part of the visualization thing is visualizing preparing. So you can visualize the race all you want, and I used to try to visit tracks, that I'd be competing at later in the season just to, do a workout there and know what it was like. But if you know how you're going to warm up also, and you practice that and you visualize that, then you're even that much more prepared. So you're like, okay, this is the time I'm going to start my warm up. I'm going to run down here. I'm going to stretch here for this long. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I've already got that all in my head before. And then I get to the race, which I've also visualized. So the whole process, for me would get visualized. I think that's all part of that mental game.
Do you hone in? You get when it comes to the nerves, we touched on this earlier, but I just want to come back to it again from what you guys are saying right now. When you're stepping on the block or coming up to the track and there's an audience around you, but because you've been visualizing how you're going to do it, if you were not to visualize it, would that make the nerves on another level that would cause you to freak out? or because you're visualizing, because you're practicing, this is the laps, this is the way I'm going to run, and stuff like that, and why you don't remember during those interviews could be directly corresponded to just the fact that you're mentally were there. You mentally understood that what you needed to do.
That's exactly it. Your body's already been there. It's comfortable being there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's one of the most influential things that ever happened to me in sports was Michael Jordan came and talked to the national team after I didn't make it. And he said to me, somebody asked him the question, like, what do you think separated you from the other players? Like, you're the best versus
Sure.
great players, great athletes in the NBA. And he said, every time after I had a really bad game, I would stay after and practice what I did wrong. And he goes, 90% of the guys that I play with, if they have a really bad game or they miss the game-winning shot, they throw a tantrum, won't talk to the press, won't talk to the coach, won't talk to anybody else, bang their locker, get dressed, and get out of the locker room as fast as they can.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I've watched athletes, and I think, you know, I see that. I see people that have this, you know, they never want to lose, ever, but they also are just type A as far as, like, trying to learn from their mistakes. Exactly what you said in the beginning.
So, okay. So let's say that I'm a professional athlete, which I'm not, and I know how to train, which I don't, and I know what to eat, which I don't, but let's say I did. How do I go on the Athletes Village and help other people?
Simple, man. You just sign in. It takes you 2 minutes and start looking for questions that you're passionate about answering. You know, you can filter by sport, you can filter by specialty, whether it's nutrition or psychology or parenting or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And just start looking. You know, there's kids all over the world that are asking questions on there. I mean, this morning we checked it out, and 61 different countries visited our site last month.
That's awesome.
So, you know, if you've ever traveled or if you've ever been to a poor area in the U.S., you see, like, there is a ton of talent, but they don't have they just don't have the information on how to train smart or compete smart like a lot of other people do. So if we can level that playing field and just make it like, look, if you can get access to the internet,
Yeah.
you have pretty much the same stuff I have.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's awesome.
I'll also say that since you are a professional athlete and you know how to train and you know how to eat, you can go on and read some of the questions that have already been posted and a lot of amazing answers, and even you, with all your amazing skills,
Oh,
can
thanks.
probably learn something.
Thanks,
But
Adam.
You also,
I definitely can learn a lot.
but you also can throw in your 2 bits as well. So
Yeah.
there are a ton of questions on the site, and which is one of the things I love, which makes so much of it a great read. You know, a question that has 25 answers. You know, from everyone from an Olympic athlete to a parent to a kid who's had some success doing something. You know, you can click the answer this and share your answer as well.
And the community votes it up.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like you're a pro athlete and you jump on there, and I'm a high school athlete and I jump on there and I give a way better answer than you. Like, you're always going to beat me. Popularity
That's
contest.
interesting. I mean, you might get me. I should probably go on and maybe I could help some people out. I mean, what I have realized as being an amateur mountain bike enthusiast is since I went plant-based a year and a half ago, I was mountain biking before then, and I was having a hard time getting up a certain hill, and then all of a sudden I went plant-based, and within 2 weeks I just destroyed it.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely destroyed it. I'm like, okay, I've been working on that hill for a few months now, and now I just started eating, I cut out meat and dairy, and I just,
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be opposite. I was like, oh, I'm not getting as much energy because I don't have my chicken breasts, I don't have all that stuff.
Yeah.
No, it's the exact opposite. So maybe I could help.
That's
You could-
exactly
yeah.
the point.
You could
Yeah.
help me. Man, seriously, no, I'm serious. Like, it's like my daughter out of the blue, like last year, goes, I'm vegetarian.
Yeah.
I'm not eating any meat, and she has her views on killing animals and sustainability of the earth and feeding the population, and I support her.
Yeah.
But how does she get her protein? Right? And so, like, you know, like, it's the
From
age-old
plants.
question. Yeah.
From plants.
And where do animals get the protein from? From plants, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
you know, but again, you know, she doesn't, like most kids, she doesn't like vegetables for the most part. So, like, to me, it's like, what am I feeding this child? But,
She's a vegetarian, doesn't like vegetables. That's gonna
That's
gonna be fun.
She's no meat, so yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, like, okay, we've
Lots
got
of
beans
potatoes.
and we've got like I'm trying to like find all these healthy things, but yeah, I've been on there asking questions and my wife too,
Yeah.
because things come up when you're a parent, and yeah.
Well, protein hides and like so many, like even broccoli has protein. So many things have protein, so she'll be fine. Especially if she's living off of beans, then
Yeah.
she'll be
Yeah.
fine. Okay, last question. Advice for you guys as younger selves. It's my favorite one.
Don't do a startup.
Yeah, please. I think I would allude to what I mentioned before, as it relates at least to sports. It's not just about winning and losing. The whole ride, the whole process, the gift of that you give to yourself of committing to try to do your best at something is really what the journey is, and I've taken that from sports and done that with the rest of my life as well in other things. But the gift of sports to me is being active and being healthy and being able to stay active and stay healthy. It's not about trying to compete at the highest level all the time, which my younger, stupid self, short-sighted, didn't have the Athletes Village to help me at the time. Didn't know.
Didn't see that, yeah.
But I see it so clearly now.
I would say two things from me. The first one would be people just need to realize, like, as a human, not an athlete or not a certain level athlete or anything like that, you have this amazing gift and this amazing power to help other people. And we all have something that we're passionate about. We all have something that experiences that we've been through that we can help people guide through much better than we did, right? And so stop sitting back, stop being lonely, go on and find a way, whether it's through our site or through something else, where you can help other people. I mean, sports to us is one of the last things we have as a human race that can truly unite anybody, whether it's different religion, different skin color, different gender, different, you name it, it has that amazing power, right? And so that's one of the things we're looking to leverage. And I would say the second thing, which is completely different, but one of the main questions and things we deal with on the site is this attitude of these kids that are like 13, 14, who are quitting sports because they've just gotten to a point where they just burn out, or they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel type thing. They think that light is a train coming out.
Yeah,
right?
Dealing with the younger me.
From my experience, and this could be any level of college athletics. If you can stick through sports in high school and have the opportunity to compete in college, whether it's community college, D3, whatever, it's an amazing experience. Like everything you've done and put into high school sports is quadrupled in the give back when you compete at the college level, because from my experience, those are friends that I'm going to have, I am so tight with. You kind of like, you're going through this super hard experience of like school and everything's different and thousands of people around you and all this, but you've got this family who's taking care of you, right? And so to me, it's not about, I know it's cliche, but it's not about the awards and the accolades and all that stuff, man. It's about just making it through, having a great experience, tough it out. Everybody goes through that burnout phase. I went through it a couple times in high school. I missed all the great parties. Like, every party was the amazing party that you can't miss. And I had practice at 5 a.m. next morning. My parents were like, yeah, you can go until 8. And that's like, or 9. And that's like when the cake got there. And I was like,
yeah.
So, that's one of the things I want to like just get out there. Like, just go have fun. You can last through it. And for parents, just, it's about your kids, right? Ultimately, I know you want the best for them, and I know you see like what great athletes can get on the back end, but honestly, it's all about the experience. Like, when it's all said and done, you want to have a great relationship with your kids and be able to sit back when you're older and laugh about like, like that was so cool watching you do this and this when you played these sports. It's all about the experiences.
It's awesome. So how do how do people find you guys personally? Connect with you guys, ask any questions, A, and then B, obviously, how do they find the Athletes Village?
You can contact us through the website, theathletesvillage.com. Our social media is TAV Sports for Instagram. No, for TAV Sports 1 for Instagram.
Yep.
TAV Sports for Facebook, Twitter, everything else, Tumblr, you name it.
Yeah. You can find us if you look.
We'll put that in the link bio too.
Yeah, I mean you can connect through our contact us on the website and give us advice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't care what level of athlete you are, like give us advice. Like we want to hear like how can we make this even better, you know, for the experts, for, you know, the 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, you know, that's on there, for the parents.
Yeah, I mean, I can see parents going on and giving advice on all ranges of subjects. I have seen it, but like parents, honestly, if you're listening, like how many things have you seen over the years of watching your kid grow up through a sport or sports that you're like, oh, I know how to answer that question. I've seen that happen to my son and my daughter, and I totally can help another kid out or another parent help their kid out. And how good are you going to feel from doing that?
Yeah.
So go on the Athletes Village, check it out, sign up, help people. That's what this is all about. That's the why. Help people and keep them active.
There you go.
Guys, thanks so much for being on.
Yeah,
Appreciate
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it a lot.
Thank you for watching Torcom Talk. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please hit subscribe and or follow to be notified when we launch our next episode. Have a good one.